Welcome to another episode of Down the Barrel Podcast with Jimmy and Dino.
And sometimes Jared.
Down the Barrel Podcast is brought to you by the Minnesota Deer Hunters Association
and Wolf.Report. Wolf.Report, a platform dedicated to elevating the voices of Minnesota hunters, trappers, and outdoor enthusiasts. Join us in advocating for responsible wolf management in Minnesota. Share your reports, photos, and stories, and together we will ensure that they are seen by all.
The Minnesota Deer Hunters Association, protecting the future of deer and deer hunting through habitat, education, advocacy, and legislation.
Okay, today we're here again with Joe Cannella, and we're going to talk about hides for habitat. Thanks for joining us again, Joe.
Oh, it's great to be here again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Hides for habitat. So obviously, you know,
it's been around for a long time.
Yeah. 1985. Is that right?
Yeah, it goes way back.
Yeah.
Right. I would have just got out of high school.
Right. I think, yeah. I mean, you were born then, weren't you, Dean?
I was born before then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was just making sure because you're the youngest one here. So
I am. I was born before the Hides program was alive, available. Right. So, I mean, I was still probably in diapers, probably sucking on a pacifier, but probably. I was alive then.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, and Joe, when did you get involved with Hides for Habitat?
Well, as a member, you know, I was a member of the Sturgeon River chapter when I first moved up to northern Minnesota back in the early 90s. And that was one of the first things you do when you join a chapter. If you're one of the crew, I mean, hopefully if you're in a good active chapter like they were, and they were big hide collectors, you take part in the process. And that was included collecting hides. I wasn't a hide collector. I usually was one of the people that showed up to help do the basic fleshing. We're not doing full-blown fleshing here, but just taking the chunks off and throwing salt on the hides and stacking them and getting them ready for when the hides pickup guy comes. And then I carried on and did that when I moved to Grand Rapids. I've helped out with hides on those same kind of days where we do hide pickup day and stuff. But that chapter did it a little bit different where they actually hired a crew when I was here to take care of the salting and the fleshing aspect. And then volunteers came and we helped load them on the trucks. Okay. But it's all kinds of varieties. Some chapters do every single thing and they got a volunteer crew. And the more you do, the more money you make.
Makes sense.
That's how it works. You can also just simply have a hide buyer pick up the hides and you get paid less, but it's less work on the chapter. So if that is more, doable for your chapter, then that's another option.
So chapters use it for a fundraiser. I mean, the whole idea of Hides for Habitat is a fundraiser, right?
And then I just recently became the Habitat Committee Chairman.
Okay.
And Hides for Habitat is one of the programs that falls under that, along with the Conservation Seed and the Apple Tree Program. So those are under that. And yeah, it's a phenomenal program. I mean, it doesn't get any more perfect than this.
Yep.
Hunt deer, shoot deer, skin deer, collect hide, turn in hide, get money back, put that money into benefiting the deer.
Right. I mean, it's a no-brainer really, because all of us hunters, if we're lucky enough to harvest a deer, we have to dispose of that hide somewhere.
Yeah.
And why not just drop it off in a bright orange box?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The one that says MDHA on it, Hides for Habitat. And then that hide is going to be turned into habitat.
Right. Yeah. To get you your next deer.
Yeah. And it's a cool thing because depending on what we get for the hides, it might be some years it's been as high as $8 to $10. And it all depends on the fur market. That goes up and down, right? So it might be like $6 is what we've been getting more recently. I think it's been about $6.
Yeah, something right around there.
Now, maybe that sounds like a lot to you. Maybe it doesn't. But the bottom line is it's not just $6. That's what's really cool about it is those $6 get matched constantly. So, for example, the hide for $6, when some chapter wants to do a habitat project, they turn around and they kick in money from their accounts.
Right.
Some of that was generated from banquets. Some of it was generated from some kind of special raffle they may have done, or it's from their hides. And then the Hides for Habitat Committee, they get a cut of every hide that's been collected that generates one lump sum. So now Itasca chapter, Thief River Falls chapter, what might be, says, hey, we got a really great idea for our habitat project. We talked it over with our area wildlife manager. They're going to apply for a Conservation Partners Legacy Grant. That's the stuff that CPL grants, you'll hear me say from now on. So it's saying the whole drawn out thing. Those monies are when we pay that percentage off our sales tax. That's the money that was set aside for conservation projects for smaller organizations, as opposed to some of the really big, giant projects. That goes in, oh man, I'm escaping. The Lessard's Sam Council.
Yep.
So there's two pools. This pool was set aside for doing lots and lots of smaller habitat projects.
Right.
So your local manager might say, yeah, I got this really cool thing I want to do. It's an oak tree planting project or wildlife openings on this WMA or state forest. He and or our office, via Kim Washburn is our specialist on this, the grant writing, will write a grant for that CPL grant. And it might be like a $50,000 fund grant. Chapter kicks in a certain amount. Hides for Habitat Committee kicks in a little bit. And then, the National Wild Turkey Federation says, hey, we need wildlife openings in that area too. That would be really cool for us. And Rough Grouse Society says, oh, you're going to do some setbacks and early succession? We're in too. And then boom, that's how a grant is done. And that's how a habitat project gets done.
Yeah.
And this all started with a hide.
Yeah.
Right. And that is great. And that's basically why the program was started, I assume, back in the 80s. I mean,
yeah. And it's also that recycling. I know there's a graphic that we use every now and then.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to remember what all it says, but it's the best recycling program that there is.
It's basically the arrows form of just like we've all been learned since recycling became a thing. And if you think about it, this program predates recycling of everything else.
Right,
so not like that wasn't happening, but when everybody started recycling in more like the mid 90s or something, you could say it kind of became commonplace. And here we were doing this in the early 80s.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's an amazing program and project, and it does really well. I mean, we on the average collect roughly 20% of the harvested deer.
And that's an amazing number considering all
that
the
does
deer harvested.
blow my mind.
Yeah, it actually surprised me too, because I thought, wow, man, I think we could I still get frustrated. I mean, talking to people and they've never heard of it and they're hunters, it blows me away.
Yep.
And of course, there's a little bit of the competition of there'll be somebody else's box. And, if you drop your hide off here, I'll give you a pair of these cheap gloves.
Yeah, gloves or a knife. Or
a really, really cheap knife.
Yeah.
I mean, a really cheap knife.
Yeah,
The gloves, they're not bad. They're pretty good, actually.
Yeah.
I don't mind the gloves but the knife is a piece of junk, people, really. Really?
Yeah, at times, for sure.
So, if we are getting 20%, you got to be really happy with that. Could we do better? Yeah, absolutely. I'm sure there's still a lot of people that the hides aren't getting in the boxes that we could be collecting. And and right now, we have 60 some chapters, correct? It's like 36 chapters on the average.
Yeah.
And we went up a little bit this year because we've got a deal with another fella that's going to collect hides, and his is more of a service. So for chapters that have been out of the program for a little while because of just haven't had the time, volunteer strength, they're signed up for it. So he's basically picking up the hides, and all they're doing is he's doing it in the name of the MDHA. And that's pretty cool.
Nice to be able to have that, because we all know, it's a volunteer organization that it's a lot of work.
It's
like you said, if certain chapters, you do the fleshing or, the somewhat, and then the salting and everything. That's
it's a dirty job.
Yeah, I know the Thief River boys. They do it in a couple nights, and they do some of the most amount of hides, and it takes a village.
They are one of the biggest hide
are.
collectors. What do we got here? Thief River Falls last year collected 3,746 hides.
Wow.
I didn't think they had deer up there.
That's what I've been told, but apparently somebody's been getting deer up
Yeah.
there.
There must be a few hiding up there.
No,
Yep.
they do really well. And there's other chapters too, but it really, you got chapters that are collecting anywhere from 100 hides, but there's a lot of 1,000 hide
There
chapters.
is, which is amazing, and it's spread throughout too. I mean, like you said, Jim, there's 3,000 deer up there.
Right.
But then you go to central Minnesota and I know the Brandon area, they get, 1,500. And then, kind of by Sant area, they get quite a few right around that time or right around that number. And then it just depends. And then, of course, with the chapters, where their boxes are too.
Right.
Location.
Do they have one box? Do they have 10 boxes?
Location. And then it's also competition. If you have a really good, say, processor in the area, well, they're going to get them. So there is some decent competition in the areas. But,
however, there are some processors that are very generous.
There are.
And there are some. I just learned about one processor for the Itasca County chapter that literally gives the hides to the chapter.
They do.
And who's that?
That's Ortiz over there in Deer River.
Okay. Yeah, I've used
And
Ortiz before.
SNS, it gives a generous donation.
Mhm.
Yep, they do.
That's where I went this year.
So that's something that I've kind of thought about as a new chair, that have often had this idea that I just will briefly discuss because it hasn't gone anywhere yet. But it's someday I'd like to acknowledge all of the processors that help fund the MDHA's Hides for Habitat program in one shape or form or other. How we're going to do it, I'm not sure, but I want to acknowledge them via press releases, ad in the magazine and the news and outdoor news or something.
You should talk to me, Joe, later. I'll tell you how to acknowledge them. I got an idea that'll.
Because the fact of the matter is, less and less people process their own deer.
Correct.
That is true. I used to process mine a lot more, and now that I'm older and my son's hunting, I'm working more.
Old.
I am so old.
It's just time.
It's
and not even time. You can make time if you want to.
And with me,
mine is the facility.
The facility. I do not have a good. And my wife frowns when I do it in the kitchen with the deer fur and the blood.
What are you doing with the fur? Your wife's supposed to hang it from the lamp.
You'd be surprised.
I'm kind of messy. That's all I'm saying.
Well, I process my deer in the garage and I bring the quarters into the house.
Me too.
Or I'll even cut the stuff out in the garage. But yeah, it's just not everybody does it. That's the bottom line. You might have whatever reason it is. There's a significant number of hides that go to a processor. That's where they go.
Right.
Because if we're getting 20%, where's the other 80% going?
Yep.
Most are probably in the hands of a processor. Some are dog chew toys.
Right.
Because
some are just dumped
they
in the
didn't even
woods.
want to bother to bring it to the.
Yep.
And I got to be honest too. I mean, I shot a doe down in the southern part of the state the other day. That hide was pretty early hide, so I did not keep it.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
And that's the other thing too is a lot of the early season, archery hides. It's too early.
It's too early. The buyers don't want them.
Right. They don't, and the boxes aren't out. That is probably one of the largest complaints. Once it gets, and it depends on when the season is, and then it depends on the temperature.
Yeah.
And some people just don't understand. It's like, well, it's too early. The hides aren't, they're not right, or, and then with the season and the temperatures, it's like, well, I want to donate my hide. Okay. Well, freeze it.
Yeah. Freeze it.
Freeze it, package it.
Yep.
Mail it to Dean at MDHA headquarters.
Don't do that. But you can package it and freeze it, and then drop it off at a orange box site at any time throughout the season.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
If I get any hides mailed to me, I swear I'm going to wrap them on your desk.
Yeah.
Do not do that, please.
Yeah. But if we could capture some more via the processors, or just encouraging more people to do it because they just haven't been doing it.
Yeah.
That's just a plus. And by the way, I should mention too that besides Habitat, some chapters also you're allowed to use this is where some of your Forkhorn Camp scholarships come from.
Yeah.
So some chapters, that's what money they split it. They might do habitat, some of it for scholarships to Forkhorn.
Right. Some education.
So, yeah.
But the bottom line is it goes back to the hunting tradition.
Right. And what better, recycling program is that? Your deer hide that you just took off that deer and you're wondering what to do with it. That hide could help teach a kid firearm safety.
Sure.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And how great is that?
And keep our legacy going.
Right.
Yeah.
Make them a hunter for life.
Yeah.
It's a very unique program to the MDHA. I'm not even familiar with any other deer organization doing this.
That's what I was going to ask. I haven't heard of any other.
No, for any other species of an animal, nothing. I've never heard of it. I think this is truly one of a kind.
And like we said, it's well over, almost 40 years old now.
Right. And then it's brought in
40 since plus. 85.
It's brought in how much money over that?
It's like $6 million.
Yeah, here we go. It's raised $6.2 million.
Right.
Yeah, over $6 million.
And it's thousands and thousands of acres it's like 70-some thousand acres of improved land via habitat projects and including land acquisitions for public land.
Yep.
People often wonder too, is this only for public land? And that is for the most part, yes.
Well, yeah.
We don't spend money on our members' properties and things like that. If anybody's wondered about that, that's not how it works. These projects are for land that is open to everybody.
All Minnesotans and anybody that comes to Minnesota to hunt, really.
Yeah.
Yeah, some projects. I've just got a list of a few project ideas. Land purchases, like we said, to be open to public hunting, timber stand improvement projects. You kind of alluded to earlier, thermal covered aid in winter survival. That's a big one. That's kind of getting more and more.
We need more
available.
winter thermal.
Yeah. Yep. Planting and seeding of various native species.
Yep.
Invasive species removal. That's a really big one.
Oh, that one.
A lot of those.
Some people think that's not a big deal, but bottom line is, if buckthorn takes over the understory, that means the entire understory is useless to deer.
Yeah, and if you've ever had to walk through buckthorn to get to a good area, trust me, you will want a habitat project to be done there.
A little bit of buckthorn is tolerable, but when it removes all of the other native species of browse that benefit songbirds and white-tailed deer, your understory is literally a wasteland.
Yep.
So that's an important project. We spend a lot of chapters do project money spent on the buckthorn removal.
Yeah, for sure. And then create wildlife openings and trail maintenance for hunter access.
Yeah, I'll give you an example of a really good trail one. Thief River Falls just recently, and I think I did an article about it. It's a little while ago in the magazine. They did a really cool program where they involved high school kids that were doing learning how to use drones.
Yep.
And they were utilizing the drones to basically track out where the trail systems are going to go, because a lot of it was wetland and it would be very difficult to be doing it on foot. So they were able to use these drones to do that and dictate where the trails and roads would go into areas that were basically inaccessible. So that project is taking an area that was relatively close to the town of Thief River Falls too. So it'd be more accessible for not just hunters, all outdoor users. It was on some of the Concon land type of stuff.
Yep.
Okay.
That was a really cool program that they did. And that was paid for with Hides and the CPL grant.
Right.
Yeah.
So what do they do with the hides?
What do the hides get turned into? I'd say the majority of them do get turned into gloves and other leather products.
They also ask for tails.
Yeah, right? I'm glad you brought that up.
Yes.
Tails, that's fishing lures.
Right.
Yep.
You're talking, that's your bucktails, hence the word bucktails, for musky fishing and other kinds of jig heads and things like that. Tails went up in price as opposed to other fur products. Last year, I think, or the year before, they increased by like 6 times.
7 times.
7 times
from the previous years. Yeah.
That's significant. That added up to what was it? Like 30, 40 grand?
Yeah, it doesn't. I don't have the exact number, but it was quite, quite substantial.
Yeah.
Right.
So that's just the tails. So keep that in mind. even if you want to get that cheap knife, cut the dang tail off and go throw it in the
drop it in the box.
MDHA box, because that guy doesn't care if he gets the tail.
Yeah.
The tails and the hides get turned into product. Most of the stuff does go overseas.
Right.
Wow.
Because that's where tanneries are.
Yeah.
Right.
You know, that's just the way it is. And they particularly, what I'm told is the northern Minnesota and any of the northern climate whitetails that's the high priced hides. Those are the ones they want. So it's got the thickest hide, coat, and skin too.
Oh,
makes sense.
Well, it does make sense.
Yeah.
And, I'm just, we were talking about any other state that does this. I'm just thinking back to even, Kansas and whatnot. Well, even during rifle season, which would be December, it's cooler, but it's not cold.
Right.
So let alone maintaining, a deer hide, if you don't take it to a processor, even down there to where they can salt it and take care of it.
Yeah.
You drop a hide. Yeah. I have hunted Christmas Day in 75-degree weather down there.
Right.
So it's like, you're trying to keep that hide fresh or anything. Granted, that was after the main season, but still, that probably is the main reason
factor.
why.
One of the main reasons in northern Minnesota, we have our own little refrigerator called Northern Minnesota.
And I don't
Most of
think
the
there's anything
chapters-
like Wisconsin that does this.
Not to my knowledge.
Yeah.
I would love to find out if they did, because if they do and they're doing it in Wisconsin, awesome.
No doubt.
Michigan should be another one.
Michigan should definitely. Northern Michigan, anyway.
So and some of the obviously the far northeastern states,
even Pennsylvania, I would think, because they've got a heck of a deer
once you
harvest
put the
over there.
salt on the hide, it doesn't need to be excessively cold anymore.
Right. Yeah.
Salt is obviously a curing agent. But most of our chapters, it's cold. They have the hides are all in a cold storage facility of some sort while they're collecting the hides. That's what they do.
And if they don't salt them, then they're just green hides, which is obviously a little bit lower price. Then you hope and you're praying for decent weather
to hold them, the collector's got to be more Johnny on the spot collecting.
Yeah.
But either way it works. I mean, kudos to all of the volunteers that do this. Right. Because, saying I've been one of those people, got my hands dirty, but there are people that have been doing this for a long time.
Yeah.
And it's hard work, but it is rewarding. So if you've never done it and you're listening and you want to get involved, stop and talk to your chapter, ask them, hey, does our chapter collect hides? Maybe you don't even know. And you could be anything from the guy who just runs around and has a little route or maybe it's one or two gas stations there the boxes are that you collect hides and drop them off, and that's your duty. And then you're even the guy who volunteers the day of when they do the salting and stuff. But there's room for it. Right. Kids, we'd really like to see if your if our local chapter's been sponsoring your archery program, kind of a good way to give back a little bit, right? Because you'd be very valuable.
Well, if you're in an area that used to have boxes because volunteers, way back when, and now you haven't seen a box in a few years.
Yeah. I bet you guys get that call at the office.
Yeah. Yep. Hey, there used to be a box down at Lucky 7 or so and so. It's like, yep, there was. Yeah. But hey, we're always looking for volunteers. If you want to volunteer, we'll get you a box and you can take care of it. So that's always a struggle too. It's like, if you have the time, even just a weekend or a few days, a few afternoons, please volunteer to help take care of these hides.
Yeah. It makes it's a big difference.
Yeah.
I mean, some chapters will literally pay people to take care of the hides. But of course, that's money out of the program.
Right.
Yep, it is.
But it's better than nothing.
Yeah, that reminds me, Dean, when we were down at Game Fair, I think it was Game Fair.
Yep.
We ran into a young guy from, I believe it was Bemidji State University.
Yes. It was.
And they have these clubs or whatever you want to call them, their ecology clubs or whatever. And they were looking for volunteer ideas. So if you have a college or a school in your area, you might want to check on those.
That's a great idea.
I mean, because he literally asked us, hey, if you guys need any volunteers for some kind of program, we're willing to help.
Not to mention, at least the salting nights and fishing nights, they're actually really fun.
Right.
Because you're hanging around with a bunch of deer hunters after the deer started.
Right.
So the BSing is going strong.
Deer hunters are the best people in the world to hang out with.
Yeah. And some of the chapters, there may even be beverages involved.
If they're deer hunters, I guess I'd be shocked if there wasn't.
Right.
So it could be a really enjoyable evening, BSing, talking deer smack,
Right.
and having a cold one too.
Yeah.
Yep. And raising money for habitat for the future, really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What a better cause.
Yeah. And when you think about $6 million from a state-run conservation organization,
Right.
that's big money.
It is.
I mean, we know that there's national organizations that obtained some big dollar signs,
Right.
but a lot of that is also because of their wonderful contacts with the feds and stuff, and that's really cool that they can do that. But this is real grassroots stuff that's happening from a hunter killing a deer, skinning the deer, and turning it. I mean, it just doesn't get any better than that.
It really is a brilliant program. It's a brilliant program.
And once again, MDHA stays within Minnesota.
Right.
Yeah.
You know.
So all those dollars are spent right here.
Yep.
So how cool is that?
Right.
Yeah.
Kudos
really
to
like
the
that.
guys back in the day that started the program back in the 80s.
When we talked to Rod a little bit,
I
I
was
guess
just
we
gonna ask
didn't. I want to say we touched on a little bit, but probably not enough.
No, not enough. We should have actually had him here tonight too for the history aspect of
Yeah,
it.
see how it got started and
Right. Like who came up with, where did this idea come from?
Yeah.
It's like, and I'm guessing it was a problem.
And Rod Dimich would have been ones
And they
to
came up with a
definitely know it.
solution.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of kicking myself because I know that we've done articles in Whitetails about the history of hides for habitat in the past, but it's been a few years now. And it's the history of it. The kudos to the guys that came up with this.
Right.
I mean, that was huge.
Just to come up with the idea and get the program in motion.
Yeah. And that, if to my knowledge, hides have always been collected.
Okay.
So I think that in the beginning there was some reasonable discussions going on about, hey, we're not looking to tap into your industry. And some of those things have evolved where now the fur buyers are more involved with the whole concept.
Right.
So
they got to go and look for their hides.
This is they see the benefit to them,
right,
and are really partnering in this, and that's going to make it even stronger all the time.
And speaking of the 80s, back in the 80s also we had some of the money from the ENRTF helped fund, at least in the early days, this program.
That's what we learned by listening to Ryan the other
Ryan
day.
Rothstein had,
because the bottom line is that was news to me.
Right.
Again, it's God, I feel bad. That's the kind of stuff where how history gets lost.
It does.
And when we've got guys like Rod still around,
right, we need to really pick his brain.
Yeah, we need to make sure that we don't forget those things, because that's important.
Yeah, and Ryan, I know you're listening, so you should comment a little bit of information on there.
Yeah, where did you get that information?
Yep, you should put that on the comments for us, so that way we can have some good, tangible information.
Yeah, because getting it started all back then, that's huge.
Yeah, I was just kind of looking over some of these notes, and even get back to the habitat grants, which is kind of what all this, goes back to. From some of these habitat or the hides money and habitat money, 5,600 acres have been protected by acquiring the land and donated it to the state of Minnesota or the county, securing usage for public land, berry picking, bird watching, outdoor recreating. That's pretty cool. And then from this funding, 72,000 acres have been restored and enhanced in habitat projects that provide those, things we talked about: winter cover, native species, removal of invasive species, and many more. So that's pretty cool. And to date, these projects, 78,000, acres in Minnesota combined.
Right.
And something I'd like to hit on is the Hides for Habitat program, the committee, our portion of the dollars that we have sitting there, we've got money. And to be quite honest with you, and I tapped on this in the fall issue a little bit, trying to encourage chapters there's a significant number of chapters that are reoccurring hides chapters. They're habitat chapters that they're always got on their mind. We want to do a habitat project. And then there's chapters that never do any. So if you're listening, we want everybody to try to do one at least every other year or two.
Right.
Yeah.
And how do you do it? So let's go through the steps on how do you do that. For starters, hopefully there's somebody on your your chapter committee of some sort, or maybe they don't exist yet, but you're listening right now and you're a member and you have a passion for habitat. You like doing habitat on your own farm or your own woodland. And you're like, yeah, I know a little bit about habitat. And I think it's super important because the bottom line is the very best habitat always supports the very best deer or any game population. That's just a no-brainer. Predators are going to always be there, but the very best habitat always can support both. And I know that'll tick off some people because they just want to focus on the predator, but I'm telling you, if you have lousy habitat, your pheasant population is going to suck.
Yep.
Right.
If you've got kick butt habitat, you're going to have coyotes and you're going to have other kind of predators, but you're still going to have pheasants.
If you build it, they will come.
Yeah, and it's the same thing with deer.
Right.
And those of us that have private land and do habitat projects we kick back and go, dang, that's working. It's the same thing in the public lands. So where do you go? Your contact is your local wildlife manager for the DNR. Okay, there's other contacts too that you can explore: Soil Water Conservation District, etc. NRGS, which stands for what's that one? That's what used to be the Federal Conservation Program, and it's got a different name now.
Yeah,
they're gonna kick me, and I'm sorry for messing up your something conservation service or something like that. So bottom line is those exist, but the easiest one to find for most people is their wildlife manager. Now, let me make sure people understand what I'm talking about. Your wildlife manager is not your conservation officer. It used to drive me crazy when I'd be talking to volunteers and they start talking about the DNR guy said this. And I'm like, he said what? No, that is your conservation officer said that, not an area wildlife manager. They're the biologists, okay? Meet with them. Every single one of them has a wish list of projects that they would like to have done on their lands. They get some of that funded via the DNR's budget, but then there's always projects that they need more funding for, hence Conservation Partners Legacy Grants, the CPL grants. So you start with talking with them, and you're this passionate person, and you really love habitat. You meet with that individual, and they give you a list. You go back to your chapter and say, what turns you guys on? What do you like? And then you'd call Kim Washburn at the office and you say, Kim, we got this really cool project. The DNR's all interested in it too on the local WMA. It's going to benefit a lot of people. Could you help us write a CPL grant? And she's going to say yes, because that's what she does. And she wants more of these. She told me to say this. So we're getting more CPL grants coming in via knowing who your wildlife manager is. It's pretty pathetic that as hunters, most of us don't know who our wildlife manager is, okay? It's even more pathetic, though, that the DNR isn't acquainted with all other local conservation organizations. We both need to do a better job at that. Get to know each other, okay? So when we get to know each other, we're both going to benefit from this. One will help us understand more of what their issues are and what they do. Right. So if you get that person for your chapter, get that contact with the DNR, get the project, then you get the funding. You get what your chapter wants to contribute. You put forth a form basically that comes to the State Habitat Committee via Kim. And we say, yeah, bam, stamp, money. You just doubled your money now. So it's really cool.
Right.
It's really that easy. We have money that goes unspent. Right. I'm saying that so everybody hears it. I'll say it louder. We have money going unspent every year because we're not getting enough requests.
Right. You hear that, college kids out there in those ecology classes? You guys want to work on a project to get some experience?
Yeah.
Listen to Joe.
Yeah. We want you to tap us out. That's the whole idea.
Right.
Yeah.
Chapters raise money at banquets. Hides for Habitat raises money. The whole purpose of raising money is to spend the money.
Right.
It's not to hold on to it for a rainy day. It's to spend it and spend it now.
Right.
I'm just a firm believer in that.
Yeah. And you don't hear that too often these days.
No.
It's like, somebody please help us spend the money.
And then tell me what you did with the money. And that's, again, I know this in a lot of these podcasts I'm listening to, they keep on coming back to the whole reason we have Jim on board now is because for years, I mean, we have our peaks and valleys with the MDHA where we've told our story sometimes and then we forget. You got the fact that you were reading those numbers off about how much land acquisitions have been made and $6 million over. So how everybody should know that.
Yep. Right. Yep. Right.
Exactly.
Every chapter should know that. Every member should know that.
And I think that's what we're doing here tonight, really.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's just getting that word out, getting that message out. And, other organizations do come to us and partner on stuff. Like you mentioned earlier, the Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation, they do a lot with us. Pheasants
Turkey
Forever,
Federation.
Yeah. And Ruff's Grouse. And, and we're all in it for the long haul, and we're all in it for public land and public usage. Yeah. And not only is it for the deer hunter, the bird hunter, it's for the bird watcher, the berry picker, the
ATV rider.
Exactly. It's for everybody to recreate.
Right.
You cut a wildlife opening in a forested area, it's going to be full of berries.
Yeah.
Just naturally. Well, that's all you had to do.
Where we had hunted over youth season. So a few weeks before then, we went and mowed trails. Just as simple as mowing trails.
Yeah.
And so when we mowed the trails, and you could kind of see the deer paths coming in and out. And then we mowed the trails, we let it sit for a few weeks. And then the birds started coming back. And just the amount of grouse and woodcock and the other birds we saw. And then, we know the deer have been using those trails.
Yeah.
And then, it was just, and then we heard predators at night using the trails. Yeah. So, it's just one of those things where every form of wildlife, and that was just as simple as mowing a trail on private land.
Exactly.
So imagine what it would do for public land and everything too.
Food plots are really the hip thing.
Right.
They have been for a long time, and they are great. I do them on my property, but the simple act of cutting an opening, exposing the sunlight, it's just huge.
Yeah.
You do that on public lands, cut openings. And though, like you said, I know because I worked with the National Wild Turkey Federation that wildlife openings in forested areas are a huge benefit to wild turkeys. It's wonderful for the poults to be immediately after hatching. That's where a hen takes her poults. To nice, thick wildlife openings for bugging. It's bugs that they're after.
Yeah.
But that protein is huge. But all of those forbs that pop up when you get the sunlight coming down benefits the deer, benefits so many bears. Bears eat a lot more greens than people think.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep. They eat a lot of vegetation. They're omnivores. So,
a lot of people might understand when we say cutting openings. Up in the big woods, we have to make our own openings up here.
Yeah, that's a good point. You're right. It's thinking like Ryan was talking about how he's from agriculture.
Right.
And I was laughing as I was listening to him on my way up to my deer camp when you guys who did the podcast, and I was listening when I had my time to listen to it. And I was like, yeah, that's so true. People who come up here, they go, how the heck do you deer hunt here?
Right.
Especially bow hunting.
Yes.
And it is hard.
Yep.
That's why our success rate's far lower.
Right.
But its openings
Big
are
time.
they're just fantastic. They're just amazing. Like you said, a trail, Dean says, cutting a trail. That's a small opening.
Exactly. And every animal species will use it.
Right.
Yeah.
They'll take advantage of it
walk in
immediately.
and browse the different forbs that are growing because you allowed them to grow.
Yeah.
So those aren't really hard things to fund because that's not serious equipment. That's brushing equipment and such. And boy, there are a lot of companies now, small businesses that are they are the ones who get these contracts.
Yep.
So not only when we're donating our hides and making habitat and promoting the tradition to the kids, we're also benefiting local rural economies.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Because, I mean, you get so-and-so landscaping company, or a lot of them are just downright call themselves wildlife managing companies. When Jim Soblik is a good friend of the MDHA, and he does food plots and stuff. But I know that he also does other kind of stuff. He does trail maintenance,
trails,
and things like that. And there's now the big thing with these mulchers.
Yes,
they got them on the skid steers, and then there's the bigger ones.
Yep.
Those are huge, and you as a private landowner can have that stuff done on your land. But those are the same people that will receive funds when we do these contracts on public lands.
Right.
So we're helping a small business person establish a business that's based on natural resource management.
Right.
I really like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, no doubt.
You know,
Yeah, that is pretty cool. That probably not a lot of people realize, so.
Yeah. And when I was looking to get mulching done on my land, I was blown away how many options I had. I thought this was not going to be, finding a person. The fact is, the guy I found was because he got referred by somebody who was a little farther away who said, "Hey, there's a guy up in your neck of the woods that wants this done," and he told him to call me. So that guy called and he's like, "Hey, I'm just down the road from you, and I do what you were looking for from this other company."
Yeah.
I'm like, "Oh, awesome." Well, that was pretty cool of one company to share that with another company.
Yeah.
But yeah, really cool.
For sure. Yeah, and that kind of goes back to like when I grew up, we hunted logging openings a lot. I mean, it was a gold mine for deer.
Yeah.
This goes back to that.
Yep. And that was all pre-food pot craze.
Right. Way before that.
Wildlife openings have been a standard wildlife management practice in wooded environments for a long, long time.
Absolutely.
But let's not forget about the rest of the state's habitat too, because there's a lot of other things that get done too. A lot of tree planting projects.
Yep.
Down in the southern part of the state, especially along the river corridors in the southwestern part of the state. When I was flipping through files of old projects and stuff, a lot of that where they're extending out the tree line from the rivers, which in intensive agriculture country, that's huge.
Yep.
So a lot of oak plantings and things like that.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And brush management and such too. But then you've got, unfortunately, I've heard some of this is maybe going to have less of it, but there's some WMAs. One of my favorite WMAs down in the Whitewater management area down near Winona. That is a public land that when you hunt on that land, you feel like you're hunting on the very best farm country in southern Minnesota.
Really?
For the public.
Yep.
Because that's what they have inside the WMA.
Yep.
There's corn, there's beans, there's alfalfa.
Really?
Yeah. It's awesome.
Wow.
But I've kind of heard that some people are pushing to
get rid of that,
to not have as much of that. But I always thought it was cool. I usually go down there for turkey hunting.
Yep.
And I have for almost 30 years now. And I can't say for sure that Hyde's money has ever gone to projects like that, because most of that is done through lease programs with local farmers.
Right.
They leave some, they're allowed to farm it,
but
then they leave some of the crops, which is, I think, a great program, so.
Absolutely.
But there's definitely, no matter where you are in the state, there's project potentials.
Yes.
Like I said, first call is your local wildlife manager. Right. And if you don't know how to find that person, call Kim.
Yep. She'll be able to hook you.
She'll be able to tell you who that person is, and you can give them a call, whatever chapter you're from. If you don't know who they are, she will set you up.
Well, Dino, you said what, 78,000 acres?
Yeah, nearly 78,000.
Nearly 78,000 acres. So I'm guarantee you, no matter where you are in Minnesota, you've probably been on some property that has benefited from the Hides for Habitat program.
Yes. Yep.
And more and more often we're putting signs at those gates.
Right.
Yeah.
So people will help tell we're
idea.
trying to tell a story. So maybe you'll see those signs.
Yeah.
And you'll know that these dollars have been spent there too. It might be a MDHA sign in particular. It could also just be a sign referring to the Lessard Council's dollars spent, which is your tax dollars at work. And often they'll put up signs that show all of the conservation partners who participated in that project.
Yeah, those big wooden signs usually have
note of
everybody
that.
listed.
Right.
Yeah, take note in that when you see who's out there doing stuff.
Well, and it's amazing. We were up around the Togo area. Well, headed to Side Lake. I want to say on that one. I'm trying to think what road it is.
If I had to guess, I would say it was the Link Lake Trail.
Yes, I want to say we were driving that last summer and just happened to look over, and there's a little sign, and it had some different groups on it, and I know MDHA was on that sign.
There is a WMA on that road.
Yeah, so there's a WMA that I didn't know existed
you talk
on
about
that road.
off of 65?
Off 65, you turn on Link Lake Road. It goes from 65 to Side Lake.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
It's a minimum maintenance road.
Yeah.
There's a
I've
WMA
driven
down
past
there.
that.
I can't remember the name of it right now.
Yeah, I can't either, but I just know that there was a sign and we had stopped. It's like, MDHA was part of this. And I want to say probably NWTF and maybe a few others. Like, I had no idea that was there.
Right.
You
Probably
know.
Rough Grouse too on that.
It probably was.
yeah,
rough.
I know they've
almost
done some other projects. In that
Yeah.
area.
So,
Yeah. And it's maybe some people are out there thinking, well, 76,000 acres, that doesn't sound like that much to me. Well, it is a lot.
That's a lot.
But more importantly, a lot of these projects, they might be 30-acre. This is a 30-acre project. This is a 100-acre project. This is a 10-acre project.
Right. Yeah.
That small quantity of acreage is having a way bigger impact than you might be giving it credit for. When you put in 10 1.5-acre openings in a 2,000 acre WMA or section of it, that's big wildlife habitat. That's big. That's how this works. Okay. It's not, you plant, so many acres of oak trees for the future for something. That's big. And this stuff's not always cheap. Keep in mind, you got contractors you got to pay and so on and so on.
well, and one thing to iterate at that too, it's, out of that 78,000 acres, that's not all land that MDHA purchased or anything like that.
No.
Right.
Or, bought private, turned to public, anything. These are acres that everything's happened on, restored habitat, public access. Yep, some of them have been, bought, turned back to the state or, for public land. But because we do get some naysayers that, the Hides for Habitat program and your guys' habitat, all they do is they buy up all the land and this and that. It's like, really? They buy up all the land and
Right.
it's only 78,000. And that's not even all purchased land. That's just land we've done projects on.
Yeah, I really don't know how to react to people who are opposed to public land.
Just tell them to be quiet.
Pretty much.
Well, I mean, when we talked last time, I talked about where I came from and how little access to land I had to hunt. I mean, you want to destroy hunting, you want to kill the hunting tradition, take away public land.
Yep.
I guarantee you that you will significantly have less and less hunters. Because
Absolutely.
if it wasn't for public land, a significant number of people would have no place to hunt.
Right. And I think it's harder for us, at least up here in northern Minnesota, to understand that, and the state in general, compared to some of the other states where, like Kansas.
Yeah.
There's not a whole lot of public land in
There's
Kansas.
not. And if it is, I just know coming from, the ranch, there are some CRP land. Well, I mean, if you've ever hunted CRP, it's great for like pheasant and bird. And I've seen a lot of videos where guys are hunting deer on CRP, but it's just wide open. There's no trees. It's walk-in access, and it's a different form of hunting. And it was a different form of hunting, like we said before, from hunting on only private land and then moving up here.
Right.
It's a different set of rules. It's a different way to hunt. It's a different mindset because it's like, okay, if I leave my tree stand, it could be gone. Sure enough, I've had that happen, you know, and or you set your tree stand up, you hunt out of it all season for bow season, you go back for rifle season. There's some jackwagon 30 yards away that just put up his ladder stand 2 days ago. But you know what? It's public land. So you be the bigger man. You just walk away, say, you know what? It's yours. Or you still sit in it. You ruin both your days. Or, it's just kind of one of those things is public land.
Yeah.
It's everybody's. And the guys, and we've all ran into those guys that think that public land is theirs. I've ran into the majority of them. Well, we've been hunting here for 40 years.
Well, that's
great, bud. Yeah. That's great.
Yeah.
I can hunt here too because guess what? It's my public land.
But we have that option to have those issues. I mean, that's
right. And if you're willing to work for it, I mean, I know everybody can't. You might have different abilities, etc. But the fact of the matter is, there's usually more public land than there is public land that actually gets hunted.
Right.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, everybody wants the easy half a, what am I saying? A half a mile walk from the. I mean, realistically, most people don't even hardly go a half a mile off a trail.
No.
I mean, that's like scary for them. But the fact with the cool hunt Onyx and stuff like that, it's like you got no excuse.
Right.
I mean, I have personally ventured pretty far off the beaten path because of my phone and having Onyx or something similar.
It makes it easier, that's for sure.
Yeah, I mean, you feel so comfortable going anywhere.
Yeah,
right.
Because you just have this thing, and I realize batteries, blah blah blah, but you still got to know your surroundings and how to get out.
Right.
But to get to your point, yeah, sometimes public land can be a bummer.
Yep.
But sometimes public land can work out for you.
Shot my biggest deer in public land.
Yeah. Well, my son just the other day was hunting on public land. It didn't work out 100% for him, but he spends a lot of time scouting and finding really cool back spots that are harder to get to. But sometimes he runs into guys that are just like him.
Yep.
Right.
And he just a weekend ago, he was all set up, and because somebody else came in and pushed 3 deer right past him.
Yep.
Now, he didn't wind up getting anything out of it, but the point was those deer came to him because another hunter pushed them to him. So sometimes it can work to your benefit to have people around. But yeah, there's frustrations. I mean, I've had poor experiences on public land, but
we're lucky to have those.
But we are. I'm telling you, you are. I mean, somebody who didn't have it, you don't know how much you got until you lose it.
Right.
It's just so valuable.
Right.
Is there a number out there that, and I'm sure there is, how many people utilize, how many hunters, public land versus private?
Oh my gosh.
Every now and then I feel like I get polled on that subject.
Yeah.
Well, I've asked even on our newsletter.
Yep.
I think that definitely you could go back and it would be a good thing to share sometime. MDHA has done members surveys to know how many.
That's right.
The percentage of members that hunt on public land, private land, and both, because most of us do both.
Right.
It's probably in our marketing stuff that I should know.
Yeah.
I think we have some reports.
But it is people in general. I mean, it's got to be there. And yeah, so does the Hides for Habitat program benefit the public land hunter? 100%.
Yep.
But it certainly benefits the private land hunter as well.
Yes. Because
anything that we're doing when it comes to habitat anywhere around you is obviously benefiting you as well.
Right. And I think it should be said too, it benefits more than just hunters.
Yes.
I just got to make sure we say that, more than hunters. I mean, it's such a great program. It benefits, I guarantee, damn near most people in Minnesota.
Yeah.
If you're into the outdoors.
And that's such an interesting topic, really. I mean, I've thought about that and built it in my head. A lot of people benefit from the money that us hunters spend.
Absolutely.
I mean, we all know that who are hunters on anything from our conservation organizations to just simply buying your license.
Yep.
And then I know that there's a push sometimes to get funding from other groups. And your gut tells you, yeah, we probably should do that. The DNR, I know, is very concerned with the continued trend of less and less license sales.
Yep. Right.
And that's just happening because of multiple factors.
Right.
You got urbanization, there's a million factors, right? Everything from people with, kids growing up more urban than rural. There's a million factors, right?
Yep.
Lack of public land.
Yep.
It could, at least lack of public land in close proximity to population centers.
Yes.
That's huge.
Yep.
If it's a grand adventure for you to take your kid hunting where you got to travel 3 hours, you're less likely to do it. It's just fact.
Right.
It's human nature.
Mm-hmm. I think it has to do with the declining numbers of hunters, which I think they just released an article somebody did today. I think it was DNR.
I know where I was going then with that. Is their push then is how are we going to replace that funding loss?
Right.
So now there's this push. And I'm not necessarily against it or for it, but I certainly want to consider all of the implications.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say you start saying, okay, bird watchers, you guys got to start paying your share.
Yep.
So if you want to come on a WMA that is almost exclusively funded by hunters' dollars, because that's the fact, that WMAs come from the budget from hunting, both from Pittman and Robertson funds and our hunting license sales directly from the state. Bird watchers get to go on those lands and look for birds and enjoy their sport, their activity, their recreation without paying anything.
Right.
So should they buy a WMA pass? A pass that says, hey, just like when you and I go out hunting, we get checked by a game warden, you better have your WMA pass to be out birding or to be mushroom picking.
Right.
Or to be blueberry picking. Where do you draw the line? I don't know. But
maybe you don't.
Here's the deal. Keep in mind, as soon as you do that, you also offer them a seat at the table. You have to offer them a seat at the table because now they're a paying customer.
Mm-hmm.
So do they also may or may not have interests that might conflict with what we're used to.
Right.
But our best case scenario is to stop the decline in hunting license sales.
Exactly.
Yes.
Because something like this is going to come. We have to replace that funding loss. Yep. So our choice is higher fees for us or get somebody else to help pay the bill. And that's an interesting conversation that we're going to have. I've heard of things like backpack taxes.
Oh, yeah.
Well, they've tried that many times to have, like how you and I pay an excise tax on our firearms or fishing tackle even. Well, backpackers don't pay any excise tax.
Right.
And why not? You think that there'd be 100% like, yeah, I'm on board with that. I want to help out wildlife and everything, but there's been opposition to it. I don't know if the opposition has come from the backpacker hikers themselves or the companies that sell the equipment.
Right.
I don't know the answer to that.
Yeah.
But
no, that's an interesting topic for sure.
Yeah. And bringing it right back to Hides for Habitat, that's us. We're trying to do what we can via the hunter who's always been there.
Yep.
Always charging themselves basically, and always been the ones to roll up their sleeves and in some shape or form, whether they physically do the work themselves or they dig into their pockets. I mean, they're there, they're doing it. Everybody, some people are more than others. There's the person who just simply doesn't do anything more than buy a hunting license.
Right.
But they're still contributing. Smaller level than that person who goes to the Deer Hunters Association banquet and drops $500 at the banquet, or the person who donates their hide.
Yep.
Or versus the person who puts their hide in the box to get the cheap knife from China.
Yeah.
I mean, we're all there contributing our money. And it just, if we can keep doing our share, we keep on pushing the negative thing that's coming behind us aside as long as we can.
Yep. Exactly.
At some point, folks, there's going to be less and less of us unless we do our share in recruiting and such. And it's hard because
It is.
we're up against
All kinds of things.
Yeah.
It's a tough fight.
Right. It's getting tougher.
Yeah. So be on the lookout for those orange signs, MDHA Dropbox sites.
Simplest thing to do.
Yep. It's a bright orange sign.
It's the easiest thing to
Has
do.
a logo on it. If it doesn't have MDHA logo on it and it's orange, drive on by, hit the next box that has a logo on it and says hides for habitat.
Hides for habitat.
That's what you want to look for.
Right. You're only helping yourself by doing that.
Yep.
Yeah.
And so that's the message of the day. But also, we've got something really cool going on, Jim, that is starting the sweepstakes.
Oh, hunting and hauling sweepstakes.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're giving away a Polaris Ranger.
Yep.
Fully equipped by Colpin Outdoors, all the goodies, the hunting goodies and the hauling goodies. And we even threw in a flow trailer.
Yes. Cargo Max.
Nice
flow
aluminum trailer
Yep.
to haul it home with. The Husqvarna electric chainsaw.
Yeah.
Yeah, the whole package is worth $25,000 plus.
It's a great
You visit our
package.
website at mndeerhunters.com. You can find the links to get you there and get your entry. We'll be giving that away after the Deer and Turkey Classic in March.
March 21st, I believe.
Right. Get over there and get your entry. It's a huge prize package.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Beautiful
great.
side by side.
Yeah.
I kind of want it, but obviously I can't join.
I know. I do too.
Yeah. Into that nice Polaris Pursuit camo, full windshield doors. I mean, it's got the gun carrier, the bow carrier,
Yeah. It's
storage
great.
racks. I mean, it's beautiful.
A dream package.
It is.
really
It really
is.
is. It is awesome. And we just want to, say thanks to Ray Sport and Cycle, Polaris, Colpin, Flow,
Right.
for
working
with us and getting this done. So, and of course, obviously the money raised for all this will go right back, into the state to help educate, projects, everything that MDHA does. This is what it's for.
Right. And what better way? You can donate to MDHA and maybe take home this great package.
Right.
I mean, it doesn't get any better.
No, it really doesn't.
In Minnesota for Minnesota.
In Minnesota for
There you
Minnesota,
go.
but anybody except New Yorkers and Canadians can enter this.
Yes, you can. Any state.
Yeah.
Except New York.
Yeah, we can't in New York.
Yeah,
There was
they have
special
special
rules
rules.
because our prize package was so large. We had to take out an extra bond, and we didn't really figure we'd get a whole lot of entries from New York. So if you're from New York and you're hearing this, awesome. And I apologize,
Yep.
but we
Well,
ruled you out.
Call a friend from Minnesota. and
Right.
There you go. There you go. Yep, exactly.
We'll figure it out.
Yeah, all
Well,
online,
Yes.
so it's really great, and it's for a great cause.
It really is for a great cause, and it's a great prize. I mean,
Yeah, but just remember, this deer season, orange hide box,
yes.
orange hide box sign with our logo, Hides for Habitat.
Yep.
Yeah. It's the simplest thing in the world to do.
Right. And if you're a hunter, I mean, you have to dispose of that hide somewhere. Why not recycle it?
Yep, exactly. And the best recycling program there
Hides
is
for habitat.
Yeah.
Hides for Habitat.
Good luck hunting, everybody.
Yeah, good luck. Thanks for coming in, Joe.
And
We
have
appreciate
fun
it, buddy.
hunting too. Don't forget
Yes.
to have fun.
Have
Right.
fun. That's what it's all about.
Yeah. Thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah.
Awesome.
The Minnesota Deer Hunters Association has been building our hunting and conservation legacy over the past 40 plus years through habitat, education, advocacy, and legislation in Minnesota for Minnesota.
The Minnesota Deer Hunters Association and Wolf.Report proudly sponsor this podcast. However, please note that the opinions, topics, and guests featured may not necessarily align with the views, beliefs, goals, or mission of our sponsors.